In this lesson, we are going to fix what we have here. As you can see very quickly, this could become tedious if we're having to check for a value for every single attribute. And in fact, there's a better way by using shortcode attributes, which is a WordPress function. So I'm going to delete this, and we're going to use a function called shortcode atts. And what this allows us to do is to set default values for our attributes array, but then anything that the user types within here will override our default options, and that's perfect for what we need. So within here, we will set an array. Shortcode attributes accepts an array as the first parameter, and as the second parameter, it wants to know what we're comparing against. So in this case, we're comparing against attributes. So let's set our defaults. The first one is going to be, and we don't have many, the first one will be username, and we're going to set the default to Envato WebDev. Now, while we don't have to do this, why don't we make things nice and clean, and we're going to set the next parameter equal to content. Now, the reason we're doing this is because otherwise we would have to check whether content was empty or not. So we're going to group it into our shortcodes attributes. And we'll say, if it's not empty, then return content. Otherwise, follow me on Twitter. So what we say here is find this content, and if the user didn't add anything, if nothing was passed, in that case, display follow me on Twitter. But if it's not empty, meaning something was passed, then just assign this back to content. It's just an easy way to group these together. Now, we've called the shortcode attributes function, but we haven't stored what was returned. So we need to make sure that we store that. Some people will choose defaults. Some people will store that in a variable called options. I like to override what we have already. That way I don't have to keep track of multiple variables. So in this case, we are saying attributes, we're going to override what this has. And we're going to override it by running the shortcode attributes function. And we're going to pass in that array. And that's going to all be changed and modified and stored in that same variable. The next step is we can still reference these array keys like so, but if we'd prefer, we can call an extract function, and this is available with PHP. It accepts a single parameter, and what it does is it goes into an array and it takes all of the keys and makes those values available as variables. So rather than attributes username, extract gives you the ability to do username. It extracts all those variables and values out from an array. It's very helpful, especially when working with shortcodes. So now, why don't we change this? I'm going to switch this to double quotes, and the reason I'm doing this is because within double quotes, you then have the ability to nest variables, and I'll show you what I mean here. So now, we'll get rid of all of this, and I'll type username. And the value will be content. Isn't that much cleaner? So let's try this out. I'm going to come back, refresh the page, and we have follow me fools. It links. But now let's get rid of all of this and simply type Twitter and see if the defaults take effect. Refresh, come down, and now it says follow me on Twitter, and it links to Envato WebDev, and it's receiving these default values. If we change it, username equals my Twitter account, save it, and this time it's now linking to my Twitter account. So this is important when you're creating shortcodes. Always provide a set of defaults. Don't assume that the user is going to pass an attribute. So we set our defaults, and then we call the shortcode attributes function. And that says, take your defaults, but what attributes they type in the WordPress post panel, those values will override our defaults. And then we take that new array and we assign it into this variable. Then we extract the array so that each of the keys in the array are available as simple variables, and we return our new URL. And this gives us a lot of flexibility. Now, in the next lesson, we're going to take things to the last step and build a full project that will bring in tweets, and then we'll even allow for a makeshift form of caching. So stay tuned.